Good evening and welcome to the Liberty University of Shabbat. My name is Andre Page and this class is Pagan Christianity. And tonight's topic is the pastor, obstacle to every member functioning. This is part 3. We went through part 1 and we went through part 2, and part 3 will be the summary and the conclusion of the matter as far as the pastor, where derived from, the aspects of who he or she is. In 21st century, women are pastors now also. But the pastor is more heavily relied on than Jesus Christ as far as Christianity. This class is called Pagan Christianity. Christianity Christians are those that follow Jesus Christ. And the book that I'm teaching from, just to give credit to what credit due, is Pagan Christianity by Frank Viola and George Barna. Exploring the roots of church practices is basically what this class is about, why we do the things we do, and how we should alleviate it if we're not supposed to be doing it. So, the pastor is more heavily relied on than Jesus Christ, the embodiment of Protestant Christianity. And as you well know, Christianity was basically founded or validated or set as a legitimate religion back in Constantine's day. And the Pope of Rome is the leader of Christianity even today. So we went to Ephesians. We started with Ephesians 4:11, which is New Testament. And those of you that know me, I really don't deal with New Testament unless I have to refer to it, because I am right now in the process of strictly learning the Tanakh and the Torah, because this is a school of Hebraic thought, and I'm teaching this class from a Greek and Roman foundated book, but I'm trying to bring an awareness, bring a distinction, bring a clarity to the Hebrew Israelites that are in bondage to paganism within Christianity. So, the New Testament Church, a book that I've been kind of delving into also as far as pagan Christianity, is a book also, The New Testament Church by Kevin Conner. Pastors, if you're going to do church, please read these books, Pagan Christianity and The New Testament Church by Kevin Conner. They are both eye-openers. But for those that are crossing over as Hebrew Israelites, then you really have nothing to really worry about. Where did the pastor come from? Adam. Okay, the fall of man, walked with God in the cool of the day, Genesis 2. Then the fall of man opened the door for religious leaders, medicine men, miracle workers, wise men, shamans, witch doctors, priests, rhapsodists, soothsayers, special trainings, God, vocabulary, yada, yada, yada. The bishop was God, and practically. And Ignatius founded the single bishop rule that would rescue the church. So we went from the presbytery, or the bishop becoming the main administrator and distributor of the church's wealth. So we have different takes or different voices from different men back in that time. Clement of Rome distinguished Christian leaders from non-leaders. Okay, clergy and laity. Tertullian, first to use clergy, a separate class of Christians. Okay. We see that the people of God wanted a physical mediator, and that was beginning in Exodus 20:19, or a human king, 1 Samuel 8:19. Then hierarchical form of leadership began to take place. So the birth of the one bishop rule started in the 2nd century. The leadership was unofficiated. There was no officers. Leaders were organic, unfitted, and were recognized by their serving and spiritual authority, which is practically Hebraic thought, because we want participatory. We want all members functioning in our congregations and in our camp, not the one-man rule. There was no titles or no offices. Hebraically, there were prophets, priests, elders, and chiefs. Okay, so we talked about Ignatius of Antioch. Contemporary, he's the one that kind of founded the contemporary pastor, and hierarchy originated through him. He created the elevated elder to bishop. So that's where you get the college of elders exercised by the bishop, who had ultimate power and should be obeyed absolutely. And so as I was reading, we're talking about the bishop's role. The bishop was considered God. The bishop's role: communion, baptisms, give counsel, discipline church members, approve marriages, and preach sermons. Isn't that what the pastor does today? So we see that the pastorate is derived from Roman Catholicism, and it all started with the bishopry. Okay, Jeremiah 23:1-3 talks about false shepherds. Isaiah 8:20 and Jeremiah 3:15. Then we have, but what I want to share with you is some scriptures that I wasn't sure if I gave to you, as far as the shepherd, or the so-called pastor, which is only mentioned one time in the New Testament. So where do we get this office of the pastor and this function? So Old Testament Hebrew for pastor, or for a pastor, is ra'ah, okay? And it literally means to tend a flock, to pasture it, to graze, and generally to rule. So therefore we see that a shepherd is one that rules, okay? And we saw pastor, I gave you some scriptures as far as the pastorate earlier, which were kind of pastors that weren't doing right, or shepherds that weren't doing right. But I want to give you some passages of scriptures, shepherd, and relate. When you look at these passages of scriptures, you're looking at a Hebraic mindset, ra'ah, what they did, and how, I guess, today it's manifested or related to church. I was ordained as a pastor in 1996. I never pastored a church per se. I did assist the pastor of a church. So I was an assistant pastor. See, they're nowhere in the Bible does it talk about assistant pastors. But anyway, I was an assistant pastor. So I was ordained as a pastor, ordained and licensed as a pastor in 1996. Now here it is 2014, and I have the Lord, or the Most High. Ooh, I don't like to use the word Lord. That's ballistic. But but the Most High has commissioned me to foundate the Congregation of Chabad, to bring awareness of the Hebrew Israelites according to Ezekiel 37:1-10. Arise, chosen of Elohim. And awareness, our identity, and our culture. So in aspects, I could be considered a shepherd. The congregation is growing. So shepherd, Genesis 46:32, Exodus 2:17 and 19, okay, and 1 Kings 22:17. With the word herdsman is also considered ra'ah. Genesis 13:7. Chapter 8 and 26:20. Keeper, Genesis 4:2, 29:9, Exodus 3:1, and then feed 1 Samuel 17:15, 1 Chronicles 17:6, Psalm 68:71. This is just for your study and to look at these passages of scriptures in regards to the shepherd and what they did, and how the New Testament writers have taken this aspect of shepherding and placed it in the church through the bishopry and on down to the pastor and to the minister. So the pastor, obstacle to every ministry function, the influence of the Roman Greek culture. The culture is more self-centered than corporate-centered, egotistical in nature and prideful, humanistic, no need for the Most High. So these pastors, or a lot of the pastorate today, and this is just a generalization, there's some beautiful, God-fearing, loving pastors out there. I'm not bashing pastors, but some of them are very egotistical. Some of in nature. Some of them are more self-centered than corporately or bodily, or there's the one rand rule. They're prideful and they're humanistic. They're not really depending on God, but they're depending on the tithes and the offerings and the God of Mammon to continue with their mission, they so-called say. So Constantine and Roman hierarchy, okay. When we look at the Hebraically, those that lead, we're looking at priests, prophets, judges, kings, and chiefs. Okay? So we see a false dichotomy, division into two, dichotomy, a false dichotomy. Dichotomy means division into two mutually exclusive, opposed, or contradictory groups. So the church and the world. Okay, supposedly the church is supposed to be set apart, but in all actuality, they've congealed together with the world. I mean, how can you really tell? So, as a set apart one or an enlightened one from the one that is set apart, there should be a distinction. And those of you that know me, those of you that are following me on Facebook, know that right now I'm in this place of a distinction. Okay, so. While Christianity converted the world converted Christianity and displayed the natural paganism of mankind. That's happening today, or that is happening today. There's no new thing under the sun. So we see hierarchies, a false dichotomy. The hierarchy is clergy, trained and ordained, and laity is untrained and the worshipers. Okay? We see the false dichotomy of sacred professions, ministry, and ordinary professions, worldly vocations, all congealing together, which we'll see. So basically the secularization of the church. Then where do we get ordination? Okay, ordination is derived from the Roman civic world and the custom of appointing men to civil office. Okay, which leads us to this part 3. Okay, John Calvin, okay, kind of moved this role of bishop from the priest to pastor. Okay, and he moved it to be the highest word used in ministry, basically. So preacher/minister was also introduced. So there you have John Calvin, who introduces pastor, who introduces minister, who introduces preacher and minister. Okay, so pastor is the one that guides in moral and spiritual ways. Should, right? Okay, so in the 18th century, the pastor became the common use. The Lutheran reformers believed the pastor possessed divine power. Okay, Protestants and Catholics based their practices on human inventions and traditions. Listen to that. What happened to the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that performed miracles in the midst of the people, who parted the Red Sea, who rained down manna from heaven, who led them by the cloud by the fire by night and the cloud by day? So Protestants and Catholics based their practices on human inventions, man-made, the conference, the seminars, the conferences, just things that are invented and created, as well as the traditions. So, sacerdotalism. Okay, and I meant to look up that word, so you can look it up. Sacerdotalism. I was going to look that up and explain that, but I got carried away on some other things. So The Cure of Souls. This is also a book. We see the pastor has this mission or this purpose to cure the soul. So the pastor's main function was preaching and communion. Okay, Catholicism, the Eucharist. So, teachings of Gregory Nazianzus, isn't that interesting? Nazianzus, Gregory Nazianzus, 4th and 5th century. Today was the function, the teachings of him were preaching and Eucharist communion as far as the pastor's role. Today, we have pastoral care, we have counseling, and we have Christian psychology. Now, I want to share something with you, pastors. Pastoral care, counseling is wonderful and good, lovely. Okay, I would not try to go and pay $30,000 for a Christian psychology degree. I did it, and I'm $30,000 in debt. And I'm not even a pastor, even though I have the bachelor's in counseling psychology. But I learned basically Christian psychology, which is basically psychology. And the Most High has given me a witty invention called I Am Liberated that hopefully will move me into a place to where I can counsel people and counsel them in their true identity and their culture as a Hebrew Israelite. So, the pastor has become the local head of the church. He's the spokesman, the representative, okay? And church is the preacher's church now. Now it's not any longer the church, the people's church, but this is my church. Okay, we see that coming forth as in the pastorate. To those that don't understand what the full body functioning, participatory, everybody functioning, everybody moving, everybody contributing in the congregation. Okay, the one man rule is the focus. You go to some of these churches and they stand, they stand and they shout and they clap when the bishop enters the room. They stand, they clap when the apostle enters the room. That's and then he's the one that the spiritual authority and hears from God, and he knows all and sees all, and everybody is dependent on him. When Hebraically, as I'm reading my Torah, that God can speak to anyone. So, New Testament word for minister is diakonos, which means servant. Okay, so a minister is a servant, and we have taken minister and equated it with pastor. Okay, so it went from bishop to pastor to minister, and now even ministers are even considered or are treated as pastors. And that in all actuality, it's a hierarchy, but it's almost like everybody's on equal. Everybody should be on equal ground. But as far as the New Testament, first there was apostles, then there were prophets, and then there were teachers. Hierarchy. God gave some apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. An apostle is supposed to be the highest authority. hierarchy. So nothing has really changed as far as the Roman the Roman aspect of the Roman Catholic aspect of what is going on in these Protestant churches today. How the pastoral role damages body life. So clergy and laity. Okay, we saw the dichotomy of that. Clergy, laity. Some Christians are privileged more than others to serve the Lord. I call it us and them. Well, I used to call it us and them. It's now we are all of royal priesthood. We are all elders. We are all ministers, which you can read in the New Testament also. But it's in Christianity, it's us and them, clergy and laity. Remember, clergy, trained, laity, not trained. Clergy, the ones that are able to function in the priestly role. Laity, those that are the worshipers who come and jump and shout and buck and scream and praise and worship and usher and choirs, which we're going to get into in a couple of classes. And then us and them. Okay, servants, serve, ministers. So one-man ministry. Okay. In all actuality, in the New Testament, it was void of one-man ministry. And then the Jethro component also in Exodus, where Moses' stepfather began to tell him, you can't be the only man. You can't be the one-man rule here. You need to, divide the men into hundreds, into 50s, into 10s to handle all this business, or you're gonna die. Okay, you're gonna, the Jethro component. So it's not the one-man rule anymore. The one-man ministry is made ineffectual. Okay, if you look at 1 Corinthians, the 12th chapter to the 14th chapter, full body functioning. We see Paul talking about the full body functioning. The one-man ministry also voids the message of 1 Peter 2 of being a royal priesthood. We're all priests. Okay? So that's how the pastoral role damages the body, because it doesn't give them anything to it keeps them passive, like we said before, in the Sunday worship service. Everybody's looking at the pastor. Everybody's depending on the pastor. But it also damages the pastor also. What the pastor deals with depression, burnout, stress, and emotional breakdown. And this should not be. If we're serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're living a life of shalom, of peace, okay, then we should be living in peace, okay? So this is in Pagan Christianity that I'm reading from, and I just want to share with you the following statistics that testify to the lethal danger of the so-called pastoral office. Remember, depression, burnout, stress, and emotional breakdown occur at abnormally high rates among pastors. 94% feel pressure to have an ideal family. 90% work more than 46 hours a week. 81% say they have insufficient time with their spouses. 80% believe that pastoral ministry affects their family negatively. 70% do not have someone they consider a close friend. 70% have lower self-esteem than when they entered the ministry. 50% feel unable to meet the demands of the job. 80% are discouraged or deal with depression. More than 40% report that they are suffering from burnout, frantic schedules, and unrealistic expectations. 33% consider pastoral ministry an outright hazard to the family. 33% have seriously considered leaving their position in the past year, and 40% of pastoral resignations are due to burnout. Who wants to be a pastor? Now you say, well, you have the congregation of Chabad. Isn't that going to be a pastoral? Yes, that could be a shepherding role, but it's going to be void of all the theatrics, all the entertainment, all the stress, all the burnout, all the things that come with Protestant churches. Okay? I'm not going to have to deal with any Ursher board or any choirs or any, preaching any sermons. We're strictly reading the Torah. We walk through the Torah, the parashah, a portion of the Torah every week. The parashah. Those that come. Those that can't come. If they read the parashah portion and they have something to share, they can share it. Relieve me of teaching. Relieve me of moving. And I'm training, young men and what I believe the Most High would have us do at this congregational meetings, to where I'm not going to deal with any of this. I'm very transparent, okay? And I'm not going to deal with anything that is going to try to stress me out. I'm 48 years old. I plan to live to be 103, and folks are not going to stress me out. So, length of pastorate is about 4 years, okay? And another thing, a lot of pastors, their pay depends on entertainment, being friendly, being popular, the popularity of their wife and kids, how they're dressed, how their behavior is, and so on and so on and so on. So it's almost like dramatics. It's almost like a stage. The Sunday morning worship, the pastorate, the pastor. And I'm not saying every pastor is like this. Don't get me wrong. I'm just making a generalization. But they play a pretentious role, okay, to keep their authority, to keep their prestige, to keep their job security. If they're part of a large denomination, if they went through seminary school and they've been hired to be a pastor, then they're going to do whatever they can to feed their family. And to keep their authority, keep their prestige, and keep their job security. So even if it's putting on the church face, hi, I'm blessed and I'm highly favored of God. God bless you, brother. God bless you, Doc. And this almost this artificial, pastors live very artificial lives. Most of them, they're not very transparent. Okay, because of the cares of this world, because they don't want to put themselves all the way out there. Okay, so standards of conduct are involved like a profession. So if they're part of the Assemblies of God, part of Kojic, part of the Baptists, you're not going to get you. Everybody, all eyes are on you. They're looking at you. They're looking at your standard of conduct. Are you involved? Are you involved like a profession? I don't believe the church should be ran like a business, even though in this day, in this time, if you look at it, church is being ran like a business through the administrator, the bishop, or the pastor. Okay, especially with the money aspect. Okay, so the contemporary pastor is the most unquestioned fixture in the 21st century Christianity, but no scripture really supports the existence of his office. Okay, remember, when you look Hebraically at the scriptures that I read earlier, then you see nothing about any pastoring. Okay, the Protestant pastor is a slightly reformed Catholic priest. That's all he is. Okay, and it's been taken to a whole nother level and a whole nother dimension here in 2014. Because if you look at it, they preach, they do the sacraments, communion, they pray for the flock, disciplined, godly life, church rites, supporting the poor, visiting the sick. Doesn't that sound like the Pope? Doesn't that sound like a cardinal? Doesn't that sound like a bishop? Doesn't that sound like an elder? Doesn't that sound like a pastor? Doesn't that sound like a minister? Doesn't that sound like a deacon? True shepherds. I want to give you these passages of scriptures as true shepherds. Okay. God's purpose is clear. He will raise up true shepherd ministry. So if you're going to have congregations, if you're going to have camps, Hebraically, then the Most High is raising up true shepherds. There are distinct prophecies where the Lord said he would raise up pastors according to his own heart. Ezekiel 34, 11 through 16. The Lord is, or the Most High, in Psalms 23, the Most High is my shepherd and I shall not want. So David was using that as an allegory to the Most High being his provision and being his protection. Okay. And as you walk through this, through Psalms 23, it really has a beautiful breakdown how the Most High will search out his sheep as a shepherd his lost flock. He will deliver them in the cloudy and dark day. He will bring them to their own land, Hebrews, to feed and pasture them. They will lay down in a good fold. Wow. He will bring back the lost, heal the sick, restore the diseased, bind up the broken, and strengthen the sick. Now I'm talking Hebraically here about the Hebrew Israelites that begin to follow the Torah and begin to look at the shepherd Hebraically and not from a Roman Greek foundation, from Roman Catholicism that is infiltrated by pagan Christianity and Roman imperialism. He will also judge the fat and the strong sheep who hurt each other. He will bring them into folds. Jeremiah 23, 3 and 4. He will set up shepherds over them according to his own heart, who will feed them with knowledge, kabad, kokma, wisdom, bina, understanding, da'at, knowledge. The sheep will not be dismayed or fear. Okay. There has always true and false shepherds, and always conflict over the sheep. Jeremiah had conflict with the priests, princesses, prophets, and rulers. Those are your leaders, not pastors, not churches. Ezekiel also had the same conflict with the same rulers of God's people. Moses had to drive away the shepherds who overpowered the daughters of Midian when they came to water the flocks. Exodus 3, 16 through 19. And so we even see, can I go New Testament on you? For those that are Christian, Jesus had to deal with the religious leader in his day also. The priests, scribes, Pharisees, and elders of the nation, which is a whole nother story for me about this whole situation with Jesus and the Pharisees. But we won't go into that tonight. Peter, Paul, and the apostles and the early church had the same conflict. All true shepherds will be opposed by false shepherds, and the sheep will have to use their ears to discern that which is true and false. So, those that are speaking truth are walking a lonely road, but it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the vision. It's all part of the mission. It's all part of the purpose of the Most High bringing his people, his chosen people, the Israelites, back into their true identity. And the pastor is really unscriptural, okay, when you think about it. But like I said, if you're going to do church, read this book, Pagan Christianity, by Frank Viola and George Barna, and then also The Church in the New Testament by Kevin Conner. And hopefully you're a pastor that won't deal with a lot of those statistics that bring depression, oppression, burnout, okay? My name is Andre Page. This is the Liberty University of Chabad. This class was paid. pagan Christianity, the pastor, the obstacle to every member functioning. You can reach me on Facebook, Andre Page. Go to my YouTube page and look for me under Andre Page. Call me if you have any questions. I'm welcome and open to healthy criticism. 916-456-7439. Shalom, shalom, shalom.